Empty strings. Today, this is a little bit different. I'm going to stream video games later, but I got this book, and it's called Dating Design Patterns, and it's not actually being published anymore, but as you can see from my screen, it's available on Amazon. You can still buy it. It's just old, used copies, and it's hilarious. It was written, God, when was this published? Uh, where's the publication date? A long ass time ago. 2003. It was written in 2003, and it was like how to date as a nerd was the concept, like applying programming methodology to dating. And I just got it in the mail. I just started reading it, and it was so hilarious that I was like, okay, I have to share this. I have to read this. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to read a couple of different pages because a lot of it's just different charts and things with different design patterns, and it's nerd heaven and kind of awful in some ways, but I can't even be mad because it's just too funny. So is my microphone sounding okay? I usually don't have it up this high. So I'm not really sure like what fair use is for this. I'm assuming it's okay to read a couple of excerpts from a book that's no longer being made. Um, Hopefully no one will get mad. Okay, where to start? I think I'll read the foreword, and there's a couple of pages beyond that I'm going to read. This is a cold read, so like I haven't read most of this before, so my enunciation's going to be off, and it'll be fun. All right, let's get started. Forward, the case for dating design patterns. Dating design patterns is a patterns catalog of the original research documenting the underlying principles, patterns, best practices, and refactoring achievable in the complex world of empirical, heterogeneous interactions, or dating. We all know that millions of bitter dates have occurred, and most relationships are rolled back. A major force for this is because the API for the female platform, and as an aside, when I use the word female here, it's all in caps. They're treating it like an actual API. So, a major force for this is because the API for the female platform, as you will read later, is exposed only infrequently or inaccurately, thus rendering extremely difficult even the simplest request-response pairs. There has likewise been a widespread inaccurate belief that geeks can't date, or alternatively, that one is not a shoo-in. Thus today, as in the past, many of us naively assume that obtaining a date is synonymous with being a slick wanker, and that intimacy with complex systems in this context can be achieved only if one has an innate ability as well as good hair. Certainly, having innate ability can be an advantage. However, if innate ability were only sufficient but necessary, it is obvious from a metagenetic analysis of human history that we would have died out long ago. This assumption of nature over science and success in the dating realm is false. Applying systematic analysis to understand and successfully implement multiple appealing high-output interactions in a heterogeneous environment is in all but the most bizarre cases the most effective approach, whether in software architecture or wooing. The belief that geeks... Yeah. And this is where it's fun. Usually when I do voiceover work, I do so much editing. The belief that geeks can't date is wrong and has existed for so long simply because of reluctance among the scientific community to apply our time-proven scientific techniques to the field. Expertise in a scientific approach to a complex field comes primarily from sharing knowledge on best practices and patterns. It also comes from knowing the governing principles driving the actions and implementations of complex technologies with which one wants to create a heterogeneous environment. Thus, we propose that dating patterns are achievable, measurable, and possible to implement with a tremendous amount of success. A guide to readers. We understand that many readers might not be used to a structured, disciplined approach to the science of dating. Thus, we explain a few of the terms we use to give scientific heft and precision to our work. Connection. a point at which each becomes aware of the other and a small exchange such as, "How are you?" occurs. And "How are you" there is in a font that usually implies it's a variable name, or code in general. Conversational state, an extension of connection or a standalone activity, if a prior connection has already occurred. Conversation must revolve around a legitimate topic or more, not simply pleasantries. Session, what is commonly referred to as a date, though it might also be a seemingly non-date activity. And seemingly non-date activity was italicized. Denial of service, when a target female refuses to have anything to do with you for a set period of time. Permanent denial of service is the most severe version. Paired programming. Paired programming, a general term for dating, contemplating dating, and so on. Okay, and there are actually syntax diagrams in this book. So, moving forward, I'm going to skip the introduction, even though that was the part that I originally read and kind of posted a little bit on Twitter. I'm going to go directly to Chapter 4, Microarchitecture. And I'm not going to give you, all of the patterns and benefits and drawbacks and strategies and all of that fun stuff. I'm just going to read a little bit of this part. The issue of an architect. An architect is always an advantage regardless of how complex your dating implementation is, and an architect is essential to implementation of a robust, high-performance, complex system. There are numerous decisions to be made. Which pattern to use, which strategies, what physical resources to use, and where to position them. All decisions are based on variables in the individual system and choices the client makes, including the amount of memory and processing power available, and the trade-offs the client is willing to make. If availability is more important than performance, for instance, the architecture will reflect that. If processing multiple requests simultaneously is important, then the architecture will reflect that. Let's see, should I read this part? Yeah, sure. The architect in day-to-day operations. An architect should help you with day-to-day operations for any pattern, if not in the actual session. The architect can also help in the context establishment process and in making your attributes appealing enough for the actual session to run smoothly on its own. Here are 2 examples. Defining attributes for messages in a structured exposure context. As you will see when you read the structured exposure pattern, responding to a published profile and publishing your own profile are easy. However, eliciting a response from a target female is far more difficult due to the high number of subscribers to any target female profile and the high number of published male profiles. The messages you send to any target female must meet standards for length, quality, relevance to the original profile, and charm. Your architect can and should advise you on all messages sent for the online strategy of structured exposure. On-the-fly connection support and maintenance. An architect can make sure that fledgling connections are maintained long enough to enter valid conversational state and to demonstrate desirability of your attributes. When implementing Trojan proxy, for instance, your architect can subtly clarify that you and she are non-romantically linked friends. She can make it clear that you are single and available, and she can prompt you within the conversation to tell interesting stories about yourself or to comment on topics in a way that would impress the target female. Once your connection to a target female is up and running, and your architect will know when that is, she can retreat. This is the core of the mediator pattern. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about obtaining an architect or considering patterns to implement. You should really, really buy this book because it's amazing. Going on, let's see. Let's skip forward to Chapter 5, Groundwork Patterns. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing this word properly. It's Jini, so I'm just going to call it Jeannie. Jeannie Singles Bar. Author's note. Obviously, this pattern was not one of the originals. Steve brought it to us, along with the original manuscript, blushing just a bit, and said we could throw it in if we thought it worked. We like it a lot. Problem. You want to create stateful session with a designated peer, but you don't know the name or address for suitable contenders for peer-to-peer networking. You're a great catch, of course, and you're looking for someone smart, funny, beautiful, who can talk about rock climbing, politics, and 19th century playwrights. It would also be nice if she were 24, between 5'6" and 5'8", of French extraction, interested in the songs of some dude's whose name I can't pronounce and I'm not going to try, with long dark brown hair. However, you have not yet found this woman. Forces. You have a specific idea of the woman you want for peer-to-peer networking, but you don't have the address of such a woman. What you are trying to accomplish through finding such a woman is essentially simply having a good time with someone who likes you. Solution. Use Genie Singles Bar to simply specify someone with the core services you need, not the attributes you associate with successful implementation of core methods. A guiding principle of Genie, aside from that the network is inherently unreliable, is that if you just describe the behavior you want without worrying too much about the implementation, then there'll be a service that has it. There might not be the print driver equivalent of a 5'6", 24-year-old rock-climbing brunette French woman, but there will be something with the methods to fulfill the core functions in spite of not having the specified physical attributes. Likewise, with the Genie Singles Bar, you don't ask for a brunette who's into Serbo-Croatian playwrights. You ask for a female you can have a good time with. So to implement this, you need to prioritize the functional and non-functional requirements, distinguish the must-haves from the nice-to-haves, and of course the simple WIB-NIFs. I don't know what that is. That's probably was explained earlier in this book. The following are attributes for which you should allow a wide variety of valid values. Height. Allow a value of at least 2 inches taller. Age. Allow a value of at least 5 years older. Demi Moore's boyfriend didn't seem too upset about his situation. Also note that your dating architect will refuse to have anything more to do with you if you only want women 10 years younger. Income and education. Deep down, you probably don't object to dating a woman who can only pick up dinner as well as airfares to Rio for the weekend, and who can make your parking tickets mysteriously disappear. I'm gonna skip the rest of that and go on to the next pattern, which is half bad boy plus protocol. Problem. You want to compete with dangerous, non-secure bad boy implementations whose services are viewed as more desirable. This is an issue one typically doesn't come across in computing, but is quite, oh god, I suck at pronouncing this word too. Analogous? Fuck it. You guys know what I'm saying. To the flocking of consumers to certain widely used consumer software products. A client seeking out services that are actually not only the opposite of what the client wants, but are actually harmful. How does one influence the clients to request one's own safer services instead? A problem indeed. The classic contradiction is that women find nasty guys appealing even as they complain about them. These include the classic black leather jacket-wearing, motorcycle-riding rebel without a clue, or the misunderstood, inconsiderate poet who only thinks about himself. One finds oneself, of course, talking sympathetically in the coffee shop with the women who date these men, nodding sympathetically and internally very annoyed. So how does a geek get into the bad boy disguise without looking absolutely ridiculous in a black leather jacket or suffering absolute denial of services? And throughout this book, there's actually all these kind of like notes written on the side. And apparently this was originally a notebook that was passed around and people wrote notes on the side. So here, somebody wrote, saw John the other night in leather. Ha 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 ha. Forces. Women generally like bad boys. Conversely, they generally hate guys who are nasty to them, though this does not often affect whether they date them or not. Geeks are not natural bad boys, not even the .NET programmers. Being nasty on purpose is a considerable effort and usually comes off as just nasty, not appealing. Should I read this part? I'll read part of it. Solution. Use half-boy bad plus protocol to create a facade of the essential appeal of the bad boy without being actually offensive and risking denial of service. Half boy bad plus protocol involves applying a portion of bad boy appeal combined with protocol charm. The first half, bad boy. Here are a few reasons why bad boys are appealing, which can be reproduced and applied. Just a second, I'm grabbing a drink. Okay. Principle 1. Short if not sweet. Upon closer study of the bad boy appeal, it's not only the leather jacket and smoking in the non-smoking section that women like. A significant aspect of the bad boy appeal is the bad boys do not have highly available resources, and thus they are desirable. One rarely sees a Harley rider calling a woman every 2 hours to see if she's come home yet, or a misunderstood, self-centered poet asking a woman where the relationship is going. Whoa, my screen just changed. Just a second, lost my spot. There. The bad boy is often frequently leaving town for no reason, taking off for days at a time to find himself, or join his buddies at Sturgis. Sturgis? I don't know what that is. Distill all of this down and you get this. Be nice, but briefly. Play hard to get periodically, or perhaps, most to the point, short if not sweet. There's a bunch more in here, but I'm not going to read that about bad boys. Once again, buy the book because this is fantastic. And the last one I'm going to read here is Chapter 8, Request Response Patterns. And I'm going to talk about reverse polarity. And there's a note right next to the title here. Sherry called me again tonight pretending she wants to go stereo shopping with me. Ha, that'll teach her to turn me down for the spring formal. That's gotta be a joke because who the fuck goes to a spring formal? But whatever. Problem. You want to request sessions and not display discomfort at denial of service. Requesting a session is always a drain on system resources. Negative return values can, if you're not properly prepared, take your system down for weeks. However, you can't simply avoid the asking process, since that will ensure your system is always down. How then to request a session without displaying the load on system resources during the process and taking the system down for listening to country music for days afterwards? Awkwardly phrased there, guys. Forces. The less interested you seem in someone, the more interested she might be. Receiving a negative return value will happen regularly, regardless of how appealing your attributes are. Solution. Use reverse polarity to create the impression of a popular, confident man who is unconcerned with a denial of service from any one target female, thus creating perceived reduced availability and corresponding higher perceived value. The essence of reversed polarity is that when you ask a woman out, to always be ready when turned down to say cheerfully, "Well, you're obviously a woman of taste," or, "All right, well, I'll see you around." Then smile brightly and walk off as though it was of no concern at all to you because you have dates for every other day of the week. Typically, when a woman refuses to establish a session, she expects a bit of a collapse on the part of the requester. The requester is perceived to be needier than the requested. Thus reversing that position and being cheerful and unconcerned at being turned down will surprise and confuse her. She'll wonder how you could give up so easily, be so unconcerned at losing the opportunity of your company, and her attitude will change from, "Oh, why is he bothering me?" to, "Hey, why isn't he bothering me?" The fundamental specification is documented in the Tao of Steve interface. Okay. Strategies. There are no particular strategies for implementation, but practice ahead of time with your bridge interpreter, dating architect, or any member of your dating architecture hive mind. Benefits and drawbacks. There are no drawbacks to being cheerful and confident when turned down. Incorporate this into all aspects of dating architecture. Related patterns. Disinterested requester. Implementation of a recursive classic method call with emphasis on reverse polarity. And like each of these things that I'm saying that don't really make sense, like disinterested requester, they're actually different sections in this book. So it's great. You have these patterns and they refer to other patterns, and they're some very interesting names. Let's see if I have a list of names of just the titles of these patterns somewhere. Okay. Chapter 7, Connection Patterns, has mediator, go-to guy, with go-to all being one word, like the programming word, decorated visitor honeypot, exposed collector, Trojan proxy, unexpected resource god. Request response patterns had encapsulated big fat opening, reverse polarity, disinterested requester, classic method call, structured exposure, also known as container managed relationships. Oh my god! This is the precursor to Docker. This is where Docker came from. It came from this book. Hold on. Page 112. Oh my god. Fucking Docker, man. Okay. Structured exposure, also known as container managed relationships. Problem: you want to obtain sessions quickly and efficiently, and receive guidance from experienced architects who advise on implementation, provide dating object pools, and implement operational services for you. You can't simply broadcast to all listeners, interested or disinterested, that you are single and looking, that being a variable name type thing, and include a list of characteristics you want in a session partner. You'll also have difficulty establishing any sessions if there isn't a large collection of potential dating objects available, or if most of them are already in sessions. Thus, the problem is, how do you establish sessions, and do so with appealing dating objects, in a short time frame? Oh my god. Forces. Seeking sessions with female objects can be exhausting and take a long time. The number of female objects is far higher. Okay, I'm starting to laugh too much. The number of female objects is far higher than the number with whom you could spend a session of several years with. In a given random sample of female objects, few or none will be single or looking for a dating session. Women have a high degree of interest in finding compatible objects for short-term sessions or persistent states, and are able to broadcast information about potential mate objects and their attributes. Socially acceptable structured systems exist for searching for and finding a short or permanent session, and they often provide useful services. And it goes on to talk about stuff like online dating, and one of the strategies is low expectations. Oh my god. Okay, under low expectations. The key aspect of good customer service is to exceed expectations. Thus, don't put all your eggs into your online personal basket, or rather, set your attribute values at appealing but a little less than they actually are. Understate your height by half an inch or so. Put up an accurate but not stunning picture, and so on. See also Jeannie Singles Bar, which is the one I read earlier. Oh my god. This is just, I can't even. Okay, anything else good in here? Chapter 6 is Conversational Patterns, which covers dating savant, Carl Castle, I don't know this guy, Carl Castle connection pool, interested listener, and optimistic persistence, also known as surprise statefulness. Oh my god, that sounds terrifying. Groundwork Patterns were fifth position break, pan-dimensional renaissance differentiator, Jeannie Singles Bar, which is the one I read, half bad boy plus protocol, Cary Grant helper, and bridge interpreter. Oh my god. So yeah, that is dating design patterns, which I don't know. I think it's humorous. I mean, I was hoping that like it would be for multiple architectures. So, I could apply these patterns elsewhere, and maybe I'm really shitty at dating. I don't know, man. But that's it. I'll be streaming video games later. Thanks for watching, and yeah.